Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Hayward City Council. And wow, I haven't seen this many people in the chambers since, well, let's see, it's been at least a couple of years, I think. So welcome to all of you who are both here in the chambers this evening and joining us from home on Zoom. Or whatever platform we're on tonight. So I'm going to call this meeting to order, and Council Member Lamnon is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
Please join her.
Please rise if you like, and
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you. So I will now ask our City Attorney, Mr. Lawson, to give us the announcement for this evening's closed session, which took place just prior to this meeting.
Mayor,
sorry, Mayor.
we need to do the roll call first.
Okay. We'll do roll call first. That's a good idea. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Andrews. Councilmember Lamnon.
present.
Councilmember Marquez. Councilmember Salinas.
Here.
Councilmember Wahab. And just for our audience, I believe we're not able to hear Zoom participants at the moment. Councilmember Cermeño.
I am here.
Mayor Halliday. Yes, all seven
Here.
members. All 7 members present for the record.
Yes, but we're not able to hear our colleagues who are online right now?
Correct. I believe we need to make some adjustments.
Can you guys hear me?
No, we can't.
Yes, we just heard that. Was that you, Councilmember Wahab?
Yeah, can you guys hear? I just want to make sure you guys can hear us. And,
We can
okay,
hear.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yes.
So are we okay then to move ahead? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now following along on the agenda, the next thing is the closed session announcement, which we'll hear from Mr. Lawson, our city attorney.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The closed session was convened at 4:30 pursuant to posted notice, and with all members present and with no public speakers, the Council discussed or took the following action. First, with regard to labor, the Council discussed and took no reportable action regarding labor discussions with HPOA. Secondly, regarding property transactions involving parcel groups 5 and 3 in the 238 right-of-way, the Council discussed with all members present parcel group 5 and took no reportable action. With respect to parcel group 3, Councilmember Andrews recused herself, and the Council otherwise took no reportable action. Under pending litigation, there were 4 cases on the agenda. The first case, Martin, the full title is on the posted agenda. The Council approved settling this case in the total amount of $120,000, with the city contributing $90,000 towards the settlement. It was moved by Councilmember Cermeño, seconded by Councilmember Lamnon, and approved unanimously. Second case is York versus the City of Hayward. The full title is on the posted agenda. The Council vote was not required, but it was reported that this personal injury case was settled in the amount of $50,000. The case of Grine versus City of Hayward. Full title is also on the posted agenda. The Council approved settling this personal injury case in the amount of $75,000. It was moved by Councilmember Salinas, seconded by Councilmember Marquez, and approved 7-0. Finally, the Council discussed and took no reportable action on the matter of Rosalia versus the City of Hayward. The full caption is on the closed session agenda. The closed session adjourned at 6:30 p.m. Mayor?
Thank you. That brings us to public comments this evening. This is your opportunity to comment on any item that is not on our agenda this evening. So I'll turn it over to the city clerk to tell you how you can make a public comment.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you. If you could please allow me, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is for, and I think all of you could see it now. Very good. So community members wishing to join the meeting via Zoom can follow the information on the first page of the agenda, which is also displayed on the screen right now. And the details of how to join are on the screen, including phone number and meeting ID information. So council members, as well as public participants who have joined Zoom and wishing to speak, should use the raise hand feature. Members participating via teleconference wishing to speak should dial *9. In-person attendees, I know we have a number of attendees this evening. If they wish to speak, they could scan the QR code, which is located in the back of the room, or they could give me their names. If they use the QR code, they could complete the online speaker card, and the mayor will announce speakers in the order online cards are submitted. And I just wanted to also mention that we have a new iPad in the back, so our in-person attendees could review the packet if you wish to do so. Thank you so much, Mayor. That completes my announcement.
Okay, thank you. And I do believe that we have some people wishing to speak. Are they people who are here with us or on?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The 4 names that you see on your iPad are in-person attendees at the moment. And I believe we have one person via Zoom wishing to speak.
Okay, so we'll start with Walt Herpy, who I believe is here. Walt, are you? So we'll call Wanda Herpy. Yes.
My husband and I have been residents of Hayward for almost.
Mayor, her microphone's not on.
Oh, sorry. Press the button there. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry. My husband and I have been residents of Hayward for almost 39 years. We just put in, well, not just, but we put in for permits to do an AUD in our backyard. So our son and his family could live in the main house, we could live in the AUD and help with childcare. Well, the process that we went through with Hayward, City of Hayward this time was not what we expected. We had done a addition in the 90s and worked with the city, and everything went very smoothly. This one, it took way longer than we thought. The permits were way more than what we had thought. So we were very discouraged as residents of Hayward that this was happening, and we were under the understanding that now with the housing market as it is, that the cities and the counties, in California especially, have made it easier for people to do what we needed to do. One of the permits, I'm not sure exactly which one it was, but it was way more than what we expected. But we were at a point, either we had to fold everything and forget building it, or we just had to deeper in our pockets and come up with it, is which we did because we needed to be in Hayward with our grandchildren. So we were here with our contractor just to let the city and council know of our unhappiness with this project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm without knowing the details, obviously, but if there's if you would like to have somebody from staff call you, we can follow up with you to talk.
Mayor, I'll go give her my business card and she can follow up with my office.
Okay.
Well, my contractor's here, he has more specific.
I'll get.
Well, yeah, but no, we won't do that here, but she's going to give her card to you so you can follow up with her later. Okay, so our next speaker is Greg Popovich. Oh. I take it you're the contractor.
Hello, my name is Greg Popovich.
right.
I'm with Gold Bar Builders, and I've built over 60 ADUs. We built for the Herpes this ADU in their yard in order to do the right thing, and that was to help them to take care of child care, things like that. In May 6, actually, of 2021, I sent an email to Public Works that said that you're in violation of SB 13, AB 68, and AB 881 on your fees as far as sewer and water hookups. It went back and forth for months and months and months, and basically we had no choice but to pay the fees, which came out to 100% of the normal water hookup, 87% of the sewer hookup, for a total of $16,837. Now, SB 13, AB 68, and AB 881, I give seminars on these laws. And basically, Hayward is in violation. You cannot charge 100% of those fees. It's supposed to be proportionate to the size of the ADU, as well as the burden on the system. So it should have been about a third of that. I have written letters to the city manager, Kelly McAdoo, and that was in August of this year. That letter's virtually gone unanswered. She said that it's with the city attorney. Well, I think a month's more than adequate, especially since I've been fighting with it since May of 2021. No one has addressed the issues other than that's what we say to do, and so that's what's going to happen. The interesting thing is that I pulled up your organizational chart of the city, and on top of it is the residents. The residents haven't been answered in this particular state. I've also emailed, this may be before this current council, but I've emailed the council with the problems of the violations that's going on with this city. The remedies that happen right now, I was told by Alex Mary that it was going through HCD. Well, good luck doing that. It's usually a 2-year response from HCD right now. I've helped many cities write their ordinances, and to do that, what he said he did in a day was not, it didn't happen. So what I need is I need to have, and we paid the fees under protest. It was written right on the checks. It was paid under protest. And so we needed to get them into this facility. And so we did that. We built it. They are now able to sit there and take care of their grandkids. We would like a refund on the fees. I've asked for that. We would also agree to paying proportionate amount of fees, which would be in the amount of $5,612.33, which is approximately a third of what we were charged, which is the size of the ADU. It's 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 496 square feet. To be charged the amount that we were charged equal to a regular brand new house is exorbitant.
Thank you, Mr. Popovich. but
So I would
time
like
is
to
up,
have.
so thank you.
I'd like to have some response. I've asked for response by September
I think that
9th.
the city manager has already given her card, so you can continue that discussion. with
She
her.
hasn't called me back.
Well,
So I hope that the council and the
Okay,
mayor will
thank
push
you.
this forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I apologize, I didn't realize that the Herpes were Mr. Popovich's client. Now I know I've made the connection, and we have been in communication with them for a number of years about the issues, and so we have will make sure we respond with the city
Okay.
attorney's office review of his complaint.
You might let council know how that all comes out, too. Thank you. Okay. All right. Next speaker is Donna Thomas.
Good evening. Thank you. I wanted to speak a little bit, and I wrote it down, so I'll just read it. Some of you may have already received this. I asked that it be emailed to you prior to the meeting. There were some photos that were also attached, so I hope you had a chance to see that. And I'd also like to say thank you to most of you who've worked hard in the city for a very long time, and I appreciate it. My name is Donna Thomas, and I've been a homeowner in the city of Hayward for 20 plus years. My neighbor, which has been a good neighbor, addressing issues promptly over the years. However, there has been one issue Bart, who's my neighbor, refuses to address and has told me that there is a 20-plus year agreement with the city on this particular issue. And this is the director of grounds with the BART. There were some trees that were planted underneath the tracks, and BART had objected to it when they were planted initially. And the city agreed with BART that they would cease planting the trees underneath the tracks and that they would maintain the trees that they did plant. Well, here we are, 20 plus years later, and there is virtually no maintenance of these trees. They are overgrown. They are, let's see, the trees are between A Street and Simon. And if you notice, from Simon all the way, I guess it would be north to Bayfair, there's no trees. It's just specifically A Street to Simon Street where these trees are planted. And I think there's a couple more photos there. They're just growing, they're dead. There's garbage that's being dumped there, which the city does come regularly when we call them and ask them to pick it up. So we're thankful for that. But us as neighbors, we would like to maintain it on our own if we can get in there around all these trees. There's been encampments there. And so it's a little dangerous at some times. This isn't all of the pictures that I've shown. I've taken, there's more. But we want the city to come in and remove all the trees. We want this section to be the same as it is cohesive with the rest of the BART tracks. No shrubs, no vegetation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure the city manager has taken note of that, and you might let the council know about the outcome on this issue as well. Thank you. Our next speaker is Samiksha Linyan. Oh, I think this is an online speaker, and we got her on.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, City Council members. My name is Samiksha Lingan. I'm a junior attending Hayward High School, and I'm a Hayward Youth Commissioner as well as a youth resident leader with the local organization Bay Area Strength Through Activism. I understand that smoke-free multi-unit housing may not be prioritized until next year, but I'm here today to communicate with you and implore you to recognize the urgency of the need for smoke-free multi-unit housing, especially as the City of Hayward has recently been making it a point for tenants and landlords to understand their fair housing rights. I know that various Hayward community members, even those who do not smoke themselves, have been and are being impacted by secondhand smoke. One Hayward community member informed BASTA that when they had a neighbor who smoked, they experienced constant headaches and felt uncomfortable and unsafe in their own home as a result. Despite the negative impacts of secondhand smoke, however, I would like to clarify that BASTA is committed to advocacy through education and prioritizes educating smokers about the negative impacts of their actions and assisting them in seeking support rather than unjustly painting them in a negative light. Secondhand smoke is especially harmful to vulnerable individuals such as young people and elderly folks, as well as those with asthma. As a young community leader, I am concerned about the health and well-being of my peers and myself, and I encourage you to consider the long-term impacts of secondhand smoke on young folks, which include cardiovascular diseases, among other conditions. Overall, my colleagues and I at BOSTA are looking to you as community leaders to acknowledge and prioritize the needs of our community, especially those who are most vulnerable. This is vital in order to promote a healthy, safe environment and community, and is crucial to develop a city that residents are proud to call home. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to express our community's needs and speak with you about this prevalent issue. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I don't see any other requests to speak under public comments. Madam City Clerk, are you aware of anyone?
No, Madam Mayor, I'm not aware. Unless
All right.
someone wants to submit a speaker card, I didn't receive it.
And, let's see.
There's
There is
another-
another person on
yes.
Zoom. Frida Barnes?
Yes.
Hello. Yes, I'm Frida Barnes. I'm a resident in a multi-complex, and I've been suffering for quite a while now from the neighbors' smoke. It's very toxic. They smoke different cigarettes. It makes me have heart palpitations when they smoke certain kinds of cigarettes. I'm awakened with heart beating fast. I have an open heart valve. It's very unhealthy for my valve. And my glaucoma, I put medicine in my eyes before I go to bed at night. And when I wake up, my eyes are red for the interference of the smoke getting into my eyes, although I cover my eyes and I cover my face with 2 N95 masks. I cover my throat with the N95 masks. It's very urgent at this time that, well, I exercise and walk daily on treadmill, and I do aerobics once a week. And it's been helping me to take care of my health. My doctor says my immune system is not as strong as it used to be. I need help as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, I believe we have Jade.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Jade Lay, and I am just going to kind of echo these last two speakers on really speaking on behalf of all families living on apartments who are suffering from secondhand smoke. And I know I've been in contact with city council members and the city manager's office, and I really, really want to thank you for the communication, and I do appreciate that. And as you've heard from your speakers, we're sharing what we're hearing from the city manager's office, from Sarah, from the Development Services Department around this, possibly not being prioritized until the end of the fiscal year, which is next summer. And so again, thank you so much for your responses. I'm really here to just ask some follow-up questions about this last meeting that happened in May. I know in May, when smoke-free multi-unit housing was brought up as an additional topic, that it was requested to be presented by fall, and that was in a meeting at May. And so I'm curious if that was still going to happen. I know we're coming up in fall. It's kind of early still, right at the end of September, right at the end of summer. And I just really hope that this issue can be prioritized much earlier than the end of the fiscal year. I am going to check in again around January to see if there is some capacity around that. But as Frida just shared, people are really getting sick, and this is a really hard issue to push off for a long time because Hayward residents are calling the Alameda County Public Health Department thinking that they're protected with that policy over there. And then they're just kind of being tossed around, not knowing who to talk to, not knowing how to get it resolved. And am letting them know, like, hey, like, this is on their radar. They know that this is an issue, and like the best, sadly, that we can do is just have you try to advocate for yourself and let everyone know that this is an issue and it really should not be held on anymore. But I really do want to emphasize at the same time that the public health department is really ready to support with anything that the manager's office may need, whether it's drafting something or, figuring out how much stuff costs. Now that it's been implemented for a couple of months now, they have a better idea of how things are working. And as a reminder, like, Hayward is one of the few cities in the Bay Area that does not have any protections for multi-unit housing residents. And so as I echo the previous speakers, I'm just really curious if there still is going to be a memo presented at least by the end of the year. And just a friendly reminder that, like, families are saying, like, I don't know how long I can do this. Like, my health is getting worse. Like, I don't know who to talk to. Like, I don't really have the time or the money to take legal matters when my landlord isn't enforcing its own lease. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope all of you have a wonderful evening.
Okay, thank you. And I see, I was going to ask the city manager if she might comment on the questions that were raised by the last couple of speakers.
As the council will see in the work session this evening, there are a number of regulatory projects that the council has asked staff to work on, all of which require the same staff members to work on them. So we have gun regulations, we have updates to the alcohol regulations, we have the food cart vendor regulations, and we have smoking in multifamily housing units. And it seems as simple as writing changes to the ordinance, but I think the council would appreciate it if staff did outreach to our rental housing owners, to residents, and consistent with the way that we've done outreach with other projects. And so there's just a lot on the plate. And so I think we had asked that this be a part of a discussion in the spring with the strategic roadmap update about how do you want to prioritize this with the other items that you're asking staff to update. Because otherwise, if we try to work on all of them, they will all take a long time. So we just need some help with prioritization.
Okay, thank you for that. And I know we are getting a lot of, we have been getting a lot of requests on this issue. And so maybe council will want to ask for some upgrade of the priority of this item. But I won't weigh in on that. And I hope that you can have that discussion sooner rather than later with the council. Okay, and I see that Councilmember Wahab would like to speak.
I appreciate what our city manager has stated.
Councilmember Wahab, we've lost your voice. No, why can't we hear her? She doesn't look like she's on mute.
Give us 1 second. We've just got to fix something in the back.
Just hold on a second. Few glitches in our technology tonight, but
we upgraded the system over the summer, so all of the system is new, and we're still working through some of the hiccups. So bear with us, but it is
all right. So this is an upgrade, huh? Okay.
yes, it is.
Okay. Now, Councilmember Wahab, try unmute. Well, I mean, you were not muted before, but you're okay. Go ahead, speak.
Okay, I just want to make sure you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can. Yeah. Now.
Okay, perfect. No, I appreciate what our city manager said. I think that we were warned that, we have limited staff capacity for some of these things. So I'm looking forward to it. I do believe to the public, I do believe these things will continue to move forward, maybe not as fast as we'd prefer. But one of the things that I would just want to highlight is this past, I want to say May, June, we did talk about prioritizing HR and recruitments to make sure that we are fully staffed and could work on some of these projects moving forward in the next 6 months or so. But other than that, I was going to move all the items on consent.
We're not.
Oh, okay.
We're not there yet, but I'll come back to you for that. This is still public comment. So, but I thought you would, and you did want to respond. Okay, Councilmember Marquez too. Did you want to respond to that or make a public comment?
Yeah, Mayor, just brief. I don't want to belabor the issue because it's not on the agenda, but I think when we did the strategic roadmap update back, I think it was like May 3rd, whatever that first Tuesday of May was, I know that I did ask if there's a way that a memo could be prepared just to kind of give the community a sense of the timeline. And I believe at that meeting, the feedback we got is that a memo would be provided in the fall because Alameda County had already implemented this, just to kind of see best practices and kind of what the timeline is. So not really having staff delve deep because we have to decide collectively what our priorities are going to be, but just kind of a memo outlining what that timeline would look like. So I just wanted to know if that can still happen, or are we going to have to wait for the strategic roadmap retreat in the spring?
I will work with staff and we can try to put together at least an informational report that shares what the timeline might look like and kind of the process that we would need to undertake on that so folks can be aware of that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I see we have another speaker, Mildred Vasquez.
Good evening. My name is Mildred Vasquez, and I am with Boston. I live and go to school here in Hayward. I particularly live in the South Garden area. Now, in my community, smoking is a very particularly outstanding problem. There's a lot of cigarette litter all over the sidewalks, and it is quite unpleasant to constantly have to smell burning cigarettes and marijuana whenever the windows are open, coming from other apartments that are nearby. There's also a lot of
Mayor Halliday, it appears that she dropped, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the comment. Do we want to try to get her?
I don't see her.
All right. Well, we understand what you were saying. So there her
back.
hand is now
I think
raised
she's
again.
back.
All right.
Oh, sorry. There's power outage here. Anyway, so it is rather unpleasant, and I have a lot of friends who live in this community and have asthma, and this really affects them. And as you know, smoking has a lot of health consequences that are negative. So I just would like this to be prioritized a little bit more, as much as is possible, as I'm aware that you have a lot of other things going on. That would be it for my public comment. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. And with that, I'm not seeing that we have any other speakers, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a public comment of my own actually here. And that is regarding, I just wanted, while we still had an audience to hear this, that to say that a few weeks ago in early August on a very nice Saturday, I had the pleasure of presenting to the Hayward Farmers Market a proclamation honoring them for National Farmers Market Week. Or month, whichever it was, but I don't have the proclamation here. But I just wanted to say that to remind everyone, we do have the farmers market operating every Saturday. I believe it starts at 8. I'm not usually there at 8 myself, but 8 to noon or even 1 o'clock, I think they don't really start breaking down. So all Saturday morning out there with fresh fruits, vegetables, hopefully flowers soon. We lost our flower vendor, but we keep getting promised that there's a new one coming, and all kinds of other goodies, that food things and other things sometimes. So check it out, and I was really delighted to be able to present that to them at the farmers market on a nice Saturday morning when a lot of people are out there shopping. So with that, I'm going to close public comment, and we will now move on to city manager's comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, just one event I wanted to report on, which was very happy to have it back this year, our Hayward Executive Airport Open House on September 11th, 2022. And we had over 1,900 community members there that day on Sunday to celebrate with us. It was dedicated to our first responders and featured comments by our mayor, and also we noted council members as Salinas, Lamnan, and Andrews were also in attendance. We had 2 World War II era B-17 and B-24 warbirds on display, a lot of vintage cars, other aircraft, and then officers from both the Hayward Fire and Police departments there with specialized vehicles and equipment. And we had some representatives from local colleges to speak with kids about future careers as pilots, aircraft mechanics, or other supporting careers. So just really excited that we're finally back to having some of these sort of beloved community events again, and thank you to the council for your continued support of our airport.
Yes, thank you. A few of us were there, and it was a great time. Councilmember Zermeño.
I love seeing all the planes that were there. It's fantastic. Thank you. Glad that it came back.
Lots of kids, too. They were having a great time. It was a good time. So, with that, we now have, we can now move on to our first action item this evening, one that I suspect a lot of you have come here for, and that is we will be basically taking action on prior recommendations to appoint new members to our city commissions and our Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force. And then following the council action on that, we will be swearing our new commissioners and task force members in. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to our wonderful city clerk, Ms. Lenz, who kind of oversees this whole process and did another great job of that this year, bringing us some wonderful applicants.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that. So as we are getting the PowerPoint on, if I could get assistance with that, I would appreciate it. So as we get the first slide, again, good evening, Mayor, council members, city staff, and community members. The item before you, as Mayor Halliday stated, relates to the appointment and reappointment of members of the Community Services Commission, Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force, Library Commission, Personnel Commission, and Planning Commission. And I see we have the PowerPoint up. Thank you. So before I provide a brief overview of the steps involved relating to the recruitment and appointment process, I would like to acknowledge the residents who applied this year. The city really appreciates their desire to serve our community. As you know, this year, the timeline was slightly modified to align with the council's recess and the school summer break. So that is why we have different dates as opposed to prior years. The recruitment was conducted from April 5th through June 16th. A total of 45 applications were received by the submission deadline, and 39 applicants qualified to be considered for appointment. During this special June 28th City Council meeting, the Council reviewed requests for reappointment and approved the logistics for interviews and the selection process. Members of the City Council reviewed all applications and pre-screened individuals they wanted to interview. On July 6th, the Task Force Subcommittee interviewed 15 applicants who had indicated the task force as their preference for service. A total of 25 applicants were invited to interview with the City Council on July 12th. At the conclusion of the interviews, the City Council selected individuals for appointment on September 20th. This evening, the Council is being asked to take formal action prior to the swearing-in ceremony. The slide on the screen shows 15 vacancies and 10 reappointments per meeting body, as you could see. The Community Services Commission has 4 reappointments with terms ending 2026. The slide on the screen shows 2 reappointments for the Library Commission with terms ending 2026. And next we have let me go back. I think we're having, okay. Sorry about that. It seems like our technology is keeping us on check today. So the Personnel Commission, we have 1 reappointment on the Personnel Commission, 3 reappointments on the Planning Commission with terms ending 2026, and so a total of 4 appointments, 2 for the Community Services Commission, 2 for the Personnel Commission, all of them with terms ending 2026. And next, lastly, we have 11 appointments on the Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force. As you could see, the terms vary because we had different vacancies that were created during last year. At the end of the interviews, the council found more qualified candidates than available seats to appoint, specific to the Community Services Commission. So the council selected 2 alternates with terms ending 2023, as you could see on the screen. I also wanted to know that the council agreed to extend the term of the Planning Commission alternate by 1 year. All right, so now staff is recommending that the council adopts a resolution confirming 15 appointments, 10 reappointments, and 3 alternates. This concludes my brief presentation, and I'm available to take any questions. Following any public comment and council's action, I will be honored to administer the oath to the newly appointed members as well as reappointed members, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So are there any council questions at the moment about this? Not seeing any hands up. Yep, sorry. Councilmember Marquez. Sorry, wait a minute. We're not hearing her.
If you could.
So you can hear me.
No? Okay, we suddenly could. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for checking in on us on Zoom here. I just wanted to comment that just thank the city clerk and her team for her amazing work with outreach efforts every year. The process gets better and better, and they just really go above and beyond to make sure we're recruiting to represent the demographics of our community. I just wanted to share with the public that I did ask that next year we all take note that it's really important that we identify alternates for all boards and commissions. We did do that this year for some, but it was a very long day, and I'm not sure what happened, but we didn't do it for all bodies. So I just want to make sure that we flag that for next year. It's really important, should there be a vacancy at midpoint, that someone who has already been interviewed and is willing and interested in serving can be called up to serve rather than having to wait until the next recruitment process. So just wanted to flag that for everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other council members? Armeno.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Miriam, for the good report. I do agree with my colleague Marquez on the idea of alternates for everybody. And I apologize to all of you for not having been there and quizzed you and interviewed you on July. I had family duties, so my apologies, but it looks like my colleagues did a fantastic job. So,
all right.
Thank you.
And I will just say, we were on council questions, but thank you both for your comments. If there are no other council questions, then I will open public comment on this. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment about this action that we're about to consider? Yes. Okay, so I'm not seeing that anyone does want to make a public comment, correct, Madam City Clerk? You don't? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, so with that, we will go back to Councilmember Salinas.
So moved.
The staff recommendations, which were basically the council recommendations for appointment of these fine people, many of whom are sitting before us. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mayor.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Marquez. And is there any discussion of this motion? Seeing.
I apologize for my misstep. I did have a question, but I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. My question was, can we please flag this next year? Like, just want to make sure that, that we don't lose sight of it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure that I see the city clerk is here nodding yes, nodding her head yes, so it will be considered next year. You might want to remind her, though, too, so just make sure. All right, with that and with no further discussion, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll for the vote on this motion that was made by Councilmember Salinas and seconded by Councilmember Marquez?
Yes, Madam Mayor. And the recommendation of Councilmember Marquez is noted. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye, thank you for all your hard work on this, Miriam, and welcome aboard to all the new task force members and commissioners.
Thank you. Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Cermeño.
Sí.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes. And the motion carries with 7 aye votes.
Great.
And so
you.
now I will, with great pleasure, turn this back over to our city clerk, who will conduct the swearing-in ceremony right here.
Very good.
And now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So at this point, I'd like to invite all of you, appointed and reappointed members, newly appointed and reappointed members, to please join me at the podium. Thank you.
And on behalf of the council, congratulations to all of you. And yeah. And thank you so much for stepping up and volunteering to do this service for the city.
One, two, three. Yes, working. Do we have all of you? Okay, very good. It's so great to see you in person. I know that we conducted interviews via Zoom, but it's always great to see your faces. So we're going to go ahead and start. If you could please raise your right hand. And I'm going to ask you to state your full name, and we'll start over here. Would you please state your full name? I,
Denise Thompson. I, Lenita Wheeler.
I, Ray Benia.
I, Bridget Lowe.
I, Margaret Shabazian Barton.
I, Rajneel Prasad.
I, Shalin Patel.
I, Chandu Siramdas.
I, Suyog Zamre.
I, Jagdeep Singh.
I, Pekan Gupta.
I, Lucas Banks.
I, Jadesla Edwards.
I, Shireen Purcell.
T. Cooper.
I, Terrence Candell.
And would you please repeat after me? Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Go ahead. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. Great, you may lower your hands. On behalf of the city, congratulations, welcome. And now I believe that this is a picture opportunity for the families that are here, so I'm going to move to the side and give you an opportunity to take a photo. Very good. Thank you. You may take a seat.
Thank you all. And we will really look forward to working with you, too. And most of us started out on one of those commissions, or 2, 3 of them sometimes, so I expect in a few years we'll be seeing some of you up here doing these jobs, too. So, with that exciting part of the meeting over, this brings us to our consent calendar this evening, and this consists of items 2 through 9. I'll ask if there are any council members who wish to pull any of these items off. Speak now, or okay.
Sorry, Mayor, just that we have a correction to the agenda, to the minutes attached to item 2. So when it gets moved, it needs to get moved with the correction.
Okay, so when the person makes the motion, they should, was that sent out today?
Yeah, it was sent out this afternoon, yeah.
Yes.
Perhaps, Madam City
Mayor.
Clerk, you could refresh our memory about the...
Yes, I'm happy to do so. This relates to the July 5th council meeting minutes. It was to clarify a statement made by a public comment. It's actually, let me see if I could find it. I know it's a brief change that was provided to all of you via a memo, and it's pretty much page 12, fourth paragraph that we're amending.
Okay, so everyone got that? Any other comments on these, or requests to pull an item off? We don't have to pull that item, that number 2, off the agenda, but we will make sure that the maker of the motion, who would like to make the motion? Oh, Councilmember Wahab? I didn't hear that.
I'm so sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you want to make the motion on this?
Yes, I'm happy to move this item forward.
Okay, and include the change to the minutes
With
in item
additional
number 2
commentary of the additional changes to the minutes that Councilmember Lemon referenced.
Okay, and is there a second? And Councilmember Lamden seconds it. Any discussion? Any public? Any? Okay, with that, Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamnin.
Aye.
Councilmember Marquez.
Aye.
Councilmember Salinas.
Yes.
Councilmember Wahab.
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño.
Aye.
Mayor Halliday.
Yes, and the motion carries with 7 aye votes. Okay, that brings us to item number 10, which is a work session item this evening regarding firearms regulations, review and discussion of regulations related to firearms. And we will be hearing from our Assistant City Manager and Development Services Director, Ott, and also someone from our police department.
Deputy Chief Matthews is online.
Deputy Chief Matthews. Okay. Thank you.
And Mayor, I'm going to turn over to Sarah Bowser, the Deputy Development Services Director, who's worked closely with Deputy Chief Matthews on this item and is going to walk through our recommendations.
Okay, go ahead.
Great. Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? I know there's been some tech issues, so I want to make
Yes,
sure you
we
can
can
hear me.
you now, and we'll let you know if your voice goes away. Which it just did.
Oh, no.
No, we heard that. What is happening here?
Okay. Well, bear with me. I'm going to share my screen.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Okay, we're seeing your screen
Perfect.
and we're hearing you.
Great. Wonderful. Happy to be here tonight, Mayor, and members of the council and the community. We are here tonight to bring forth a discussion with the council about firearms regulations and firearms safety, which was an original request, a council referral that came from the mayor and council members Andrew and I think it was Lamnin to talk through sort of our existing regulations and some additional ways we might enhance our existing regulations to get at some of the concerns that council has been dealing with and the community has been dealing with. And the request was to hold such a work session. So we are here tonight, and I'm going to go through some of my slides, and then there'll be plenty of opportunity for discussion. And of course, we have Deputy Chief Matthews on that can answer any questions, as well as our team from the City Attorney's Office if we get into some sort of legal questions. So I'm going to keep moving forward. So a little bit of background related to our firearms regulations. The city currently has 2 establishments in the entire city that have ancillary sales of firearms. This includes our Big 5 sporting goods store on Foothill and Security 6, which primarily does private security, and they're located in the downtown at Sea and Mission. Firearm sales in general are regulated under the Hayward Municipal Code. There is the firearms dealer's permit that comes out of one section of the Muni Code. And then there's also some land use regulations, and it's more so the process that we've required for any operations that want to sell firearms. If it is a primary use, we've determined that a conditional use permit is required for that, in addition to the firearms dealer's permit. Now, if the sale of firearms are ancillary, that is less than 10% of the floor area of that operation that's dedicated to such sales, we've not required a CUP, but they still are required to have the firearms dealer's permit. And that's a permit issued by the police department. So just an outline, sort of a frame for the conversation tonight. I know council had been separately outreached by representatives from the Giffords Law Center with some recommendations on ways that the city could enhance our regulations. So we thought we would use that as sort of a guide to start the discussion with council. Some of the recommendations that came specifically from them were related to the videotaping of gun sales, establishing some location criteria, really thinking about our sensitive receptors and where they're located and not locating firearm sales near those sensitive receptors. Some prohibition on city property, and then looking at opportunities for some safe storage requirements in homes. And then as we were talking about this request to come back for a work session, there was a desire by council to include some information related to gun buyback programs. So I've also included that, even though that was not part of the recommendations from the Giffords Law Center. So let's start with the first one, which is the videotaping of gun sales. So the Giffords Law Center really recommends that we incorporate some regulations related to the videotaping of gun sales, primarily because there really are a lack of regulations at both the federal or the state level related to that. And it really can provide some valuable evidence to law enforcement in dealing with any issues related to crimes with firearms. Our current regulation or process would be that, through a firearms dealer's permit or through a conditional use permit, it most certainly could be added as a condition of approval. And there is nothing, even if it's not explicitly stated in our regulations, it is certainly within our purview to add conditions of approval that would require this. However, in the interest of being transparent, if it is the desire of council to do so, staff would recommend that we could amend Chapter 6, Article 11, which deals with the firearms dealer's permits and the regulations surrounding issuing those, to include a very explicit provision related to that being a condition of approval. Second recommendation was about establishing location criteria. They really wanted to look at opportunities to prohibit sales near sensitive locations, including schools, churches, playgrounds, really to reduce childhood exposure to the sale of firearms. So As I've mentioned before, and it has been shared in previous correspondence with council, our zoning ordinance really does not list the use. And so there's not established criteria in our zoning ordinance for firearms sales and firearms dealers. However, as I've mentioned before, we've always required a conditional use permit if it's primary sales. And we would obviously evaluate on a case-by-case basis if we had any requests as to where sensitive locations or sensitive receptors like children, schools, playgrounds, those sorts of things are primarily located, and really take a hard look as to whether or not that's an appropriate location. However, it is on a case-by-case basis. And if there are concerns about trying to be consistent, again, staff would recommend that we look at amending that same firearms dealers permit section in the municipal code to include a provision and look at some location criteria, perhaps prohibiting sales within a half mile of any school or playground. Doing so wouldn't impact our existing operations, but it certainly would take effect with any future requests for such use. Third request would be prohibiting the possession of firearms on public property. The Law Center says, it's a really great idea to incorporate something like this because it really helps keep guns out of spaces where freedom of expression and assembly is important, where children frequent and where disagreements are common. So like near courthouses and those sorts of things where people are, where there can be some disagreements. And so we don't necessarily in the city have regulations related to possession requirements, but there certainly are regulations related to prohibiting the discharge of weapons within the city limits. And HARD does have provisions in their regulations prohibiting the possession in parks. So from a recreational, for the regulations that guide a lot of our parks within Hayward, there's definitely regulations on the books. One of the thoughts that we had is that you could amend Chapter 3 under public safety and include a provision that would regulate possession of firearms on city property. And as I went through the first three recommendations, I also wanted to note that all three of those recommendations could be done without any real implications on issues with under the Second Amendment. And I think that that's really important to kind of keep in mind as we're having our discussion over the changes that council might want to make with our regulations related to firearms. The last recommendation that came from the Law Center was related to regulations related to safe storage in the home. These types of regulations are considered child access prevention laws. They're really designed to sort of enhance regulations related to the safe storage of the weapons or the guns in the home to prevent accidental shootings, suicides, and firearms theft. I think it's important to note that these types of laws already exist under state law, and the California Penal Code Section 25100 does include criminal charges associated with failure to store firearms properly. So there already are regulations, and it would be staff's recommendation to not adopt any local provision, but really rely on the existing state laws, given that the concerns legally would be that if a local law is substantively different than or stricter than state law, it could severely raise issues under the Second Amendment. And in addition, these types of laws are really difficult to enforce. And I'm not sure how we would go about doing that. So, but up for discussion, and we can talk further with council in the discussion section. The last recommendation came from council, and it was the desire to talk about a gun buyback program. What I wanted to share is that historically the city did hold a gun buyback event. It was held at the Business Costco on A Street. What PD found in holding these events, that a lot of the guns that were relinquished weren't the guns that police officers were finding out in the field. Many of the guns that were turned over didn't even function properly, and all were actually legally owned guns. I think it's also important to note that the police department will accept guns for destruction at any time at the Hayward Police Department, so that you don't need to have a special event to to allow for this. Could happen at any point in time. Somebody could bring a gun for destruction to the Hayward Police Department and they would take care of that. So our recommendation at this time related to an actual gun buyback program, given that we sort of already do it, not really holding any separate events, is just given that there's cost concerns, staff capacity issues, and it really not sure that it was having the effect that we were hoping it was going to have historically. So at this time, we wouldn't recommend doing a sort of formal buyback program. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm certainly here to get feedback from council and hear what you all have to say on this issue. So thank you very much.
Okay, and our Deputy Chief is just here to answer questions, I assume. Okay. Okay. So with that, this is a work session item, so I'm going to open it up for public comment first. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this? I don't think we have any speakers. Oh, yes, here in the chambers. Please come forward and give us your name, if you will. And first of all, press the button to turn. Yes, okay, there you go.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Pekan Gupta, and I'm a resident of Hayward. And I was hearing this presentation, which was quite well informed. I just want to put some comments from my previous experience of similar discussion when I was a resident of Santa Clara County. So one thing which we miss is that there are two parts to the problem. One is a weapon and another is the ammunition. So if we can, I hear from the presentation that there can be, the city has legal rights to put condition of purchase, CUPs, in place, and that can be used as an effective arm to limit the ammunition purchase. And I'm just presenting some of the points. For example, if city can enforce a rule that all ammunition purchases can be made only at the presence of weapon where it can be used. So that means I cannot buy a bullet unless I bring my weapon to the store. If this can be put, that will ensure that no one can buy an ammunition for someone else. And this can also ensure that you cannot buy an ammunition for an illegal weapon. So these are some of the easy checks which can be put in place. Second thing is you can also put limit to the ammunition purchased by putting some kind of proof of purchase of weapon in place. That means you cannot buy so many bullets at a single time. Or if you have to buy, you need an authorization letter from some police department or verification department. If these checks are allowed legally by city, then probably it will help or divide the problem into two halves of checking a weapon as well as checking the purchase. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment before we go to council? Not seeing anyone. So I'm going to close public comment and we'll go to council. Councilmember Zermeño.
Mayor, thank you, and thank you for the report. That's excellent. Let's see, my questions. Question one, is language necessary to include, or is language change necessary to include pistols, revolvers, ghost guns? Because right now it only says guns. Is it necessary to include the other names of these machines or these weapons? And rifles, do we want to deal with rifles also?
Hi, this is Deputy Chief Matthews. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. I said we can, and then immediately we couldn't again. So what is happening here?
It's a growing pains.
Nope, you're still not quite there.
No.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to speak for Deputy Chief Matthews, but what I would say is that I think that the way that it's defined is fairly broad in the ordinance, and I don't know that it's necessary to be that specific, but perhaps either Senior Assistant City Attorney Vigilia may be able to speak, or maybe we'll be able to hear Deputy Chief Matthews, but it is something we could always take a look at and look into further and come back and provide a response to council as well.
Yeah.
So,
one thought I had is if we run into someone who is a non-English speaker and he sees the word gun, he or she may not understand it, but revolver and pistol are almost synonymous. They're cognate, so that may be a word that they could understand. So rifles are not included, correct? Is that why?
They should be. I think they're all included under the definition.
Oh, okay, so somehow or other, I would recommend that we consider that. Next question. Let's see. Is there any differentiation, or should there be any differentiation between a loaded weapon and an unloaded weapon in this language? Is that necessary?
I think that. Oh, go ahead, Deputy Chief Matthews.
And I'll defer to the city attorney, but I would argue that if it's if the language is gun, I would submit that it's either. It would restrict both loaded and unloaded. Okay. I'm just wondering if it should be explained or it should be clear that it's either loaded or
Councilmember Zermeño, I mean, we're not really acting on anything this evening. We're just kind of to give, what you're saying is you might want to consider identifying in any legislation that we may. Yeah.
And Mayor, if I just want to say that, if you give direction to come back with ordinance changes, those are things that we can double check and we can make recommendations as part of any ordinances or any changes that we make. So we're happy to take a look at those.
Okay, so two more questions. And any possible language on, I like the previous speaker who spoke about ammunition. Is it possible to include some language about ammunition and being able to purchase it? And the last question I have, should we consider any possible language on carrying a weapon, carrying a pistol or a revolver, whether it's a car or in person? Should that also be included somewhere? And those are my questions. And then I have a comment later about gun buyback program.
Well, no, go ahead.
Comment too?
This is a work session.
Okay,
so.
all right. I understand this. I did speak with a couple of folks about the gun buyback program. I really would like to see it. I've been promoting it. I'll even donate the first $100 for it. But I'm sad that staff is not recommending it, and even some of the police officers are not recommending it. But I think that even one gun off of our streets will help dent the violence that we see in our streets, even one. So that's more or less my feeling. So I still would like to see a gun buyback program, but it sounds like I may be a minority. And thank you for doing this.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Zoom and Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff, on bringing this item back, as it is a very important topic right now. And I had a question about the gun buyback program as well. I wanted to know if guns can be manipulated, and seeing those guns come back, even if they're not working, could still be of some assistance of getting them off the street.
I would say yes. I think that, even a gun that's not functioning in its current state could be repaired, right? Folks can buy parts if they know what they're doing and repair those. So to answer your question, yes.
Okay. And then I also wanted to know if people turn in guns without having the program, but they have the option of always coming to the office. What is the incentive for them to bring it in other than it getting destroyed?
So in the cases that I'm aware of, for people who have brought guns in to be turned in, it would be in a very specific circumstance. So for example, and these were a lot of the guns that we saw at the buyback program as well. So you would have a couple where a spouse passes away. The spouse had hunting rifles. The surviving spouse didn't know what to do with those, and so brought them down to the police department to turn them in for destruction. Those are the types of things that we see, but not with great frequency.
Okay.
The buyback program is kind of designed to incentivize people turning firearms in. So it's a little bit different.
Right. So I was wondering if we don't want to have necessarily an event because of staff capacity, is it possible we could still have incentives there that would have been at those separate events, at least at the police stations? So for example, if you're giving away gift cards, can they just be available and still advertise that we have this as an ongoing program and we have a stack of cards that are always there? Is there something we can do to kind of meet in the middle?
I would probably say that maybe that's something we could continue to explore and at least come back to council with what those costs would be for doing such a program. But I think it's good feedback that we can take under advisement and see what's potentially possible.
And we had talked also just internally about potentially advertising the fact that, because I didn't even know that HPD accepted guns for destruction. So maybe it's something where we could get some communication support, and then maybe we could look at the budget that might be required if to actually provide that incentive. But
okay.
I know in the past the incentives were, if I remember correctly, they were all private donations. There was no public money that was used for that program.
Okay, if we can see what the outreach was to get those donations, that I think that would be worth our time. And then my other question was about Security 6. That's just a training program, right? They're not selling. Are they selling guns at that location?
I think that they have a firearms dealer's permit, but it may be because they train with firearms. But yeah, I mean, there literally are 2 outfits in the city that have a firearms dealer's permit, and that's one of them.
Okay, so that's like a very specific group. It's not like they're selling to everyone. Okay.
Correct. And Big Five is not necessarily their primary retail sales, are not firearms.
Okay, great. All right, well, those were my 2 questions, and I look forward to seeing some of these changes come if we were to move forward. So thank you again for all your hard work on this. This is, again, very important.
Okay, thank you. And we'll come back to chambers here and go to Councilmember Salinas.
Thank you. And I also wanted to just give words of appreciation to the mayor and, of course, council members Andrews and Laminin for bringing this up. And I have a couple questions, actually more than a couple, but my first question is regarding the video process. Who would collect, hold, and maintain those videos?
So typically the business would, and then they would be available to PD should they desire to see any of the video associated with any of the sales, but generally probably in conjunction with a crime. But it would be evaluated as a part of any operation, typically added as a condition of approval, and then the details of that would be worked out through that process. But typically, I think it's the business owner themselves. With sharing that info with PD as requested.
And the fact that other cities do this, I guess there are companies out there that hold this information. Correct?
I mean, I would think so, that there's probably services that do it, just like they've got, video surveillance of other business, cannabis or a bank or what have you. And I'm sure that there are services that can be provided and probably have cloud service or something in order to sustain the video.
Okay. Related, but a little bit to the side a bit. I know we are everything here. We're talking about guns, and as I was reading the report, of course, I'm thinking about guns with bullets. What about other weapons like BB guns? Would that be included in this ordinance? Or is that defined? Let me ask the first question. Is a BB gun defined as a gun under this definition? And then ought we include a BB gun in this ordinance?
So a BB gun is not classified as a firearm. So the state and federal regulations for purchase don't apply to a BB gun. And then if including that in these documents, I mean, that would be up to you all as council members.
And so, and what's the age to buy a BB gun? Is it like 18? Is it 18 and older?
That's a great question. I'm going to assume it is 18, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. So when this does come back, I'd like to see, when this comes back to us for another reading, I'd like for us to consider including BB guns, at least think about it, and if it can be included in this, be included. The reason why is because if we're going to be videotaping people purchasing guns, it'd also be interesting. I would also like to see even collecting data on the purchase of BB guns, right?
Okay. If we were going to be doing that, which is, it's only, I mean, I'm not hearing other people say videotaping necessarily is what we want to do.
Well, I'm assuming that these are staff recommendations.
Right? Yes, except that I think that what will come back depends on what we ask for. So it is appropriate for,
if there is an element of videotaping, I'd like to see some analyses on whether it is plausible or not to include BB guns. Okay.
Okay.
Now, in terms of location criteria, the 1,000-foot buffer, we do that for other things, and that's fine. And I notice it says schools, but do we need to be more specific and include preschools? Should that something, or is
something we should consider?
That's what council desires. If we were to add that, I mean, we can certainly incorporate any language that based on the direction from council.
So so include the language of preschool. Conversely, I was also thinking about what about being next to commercial spots or businesses that target a youth or kid market? Like, you're not going to put a gun shop next to an arcade, or you're not going to put a gun shop next to an ice cream parlor, or something. Could that be also included in the 1,000-foot buffer? Businesses or retail that target youth market. So I'm assuming that's a yes.
Well, of course, it could be if we go that route. Yeah.
Okay. The prohibition on public property, I think that's fine. I have been to public agencies and college campuses, and there's signs that say no guns permitted on campus and so forth. So I think that is that's good. And then the safe storage, okay, and I think the language there is good. I just want to make a quick comment on the gun buyback program, and I have friends that have organized gun buyback programs, and they're good, and they certainly create a lot of media buzz. They're incredibly expensive. I think a few years ago there was a group who did one, and they had a fundraising goal of something like $10,000 to $20,000 that they raised. And I mean, so, whether I didn't know if they were, the information that the deputy chief just provided to us, I didn't know what kind of outcomes they produced and what kinds of, what was the success rate. But I guess I would like to see, a little bit more articulation in a gun buyback program, because I know they cost a lot of money, and I don't know if they do provide the results that we're looking for. So, those are my comments there. I wanted to just quickly highlight Mr. Gupta's comments about, this idea around separating the two entities, the gun, the weapon, and then the ammunition. And, I do like that idea about having to provide the gun in order to buy the ammunition. That would be interesting. I don't know how, I don't know if that could happen every time, but I like that idea, because if we're videotaping people, then we have both the person with the gun buying the ammunition, and but as we're doing that, I would also perhaps that's how we can register more guns simultaneously, and so I kind of like that, and if perhaps staff can put some thinking around that, and see if they can bring something, how that might look like in this ordinance. I would be interested to see that, and I wanted to thank Mr. Gupta for those comments, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll go back to Zoom and Councilmember Wahab.
Thank you. And this is both questions and comments, correct? Work session,
Yeah,
yes.
it is,
Okay.
yeah.
So I do appreciate you guys bringing this forward with the recommendations that you guys have. I actually do not, after talking and doing some research about the gun buyback, for example, the city of San Francisco did a gun buyback maybe a couple months ago by now. They were offering up to $200, $250, something like that for the different guns. $250 to $500, you could potentially buy a ghost gun on the street. And we don't necessarily want for a gun owner to go switch up and buy a ghost gun per se, not saying that they will, but trying to limit that interaction. We could also potentially partner, if we were ever to do it, with the county sheriff, maybe multiple different police agencies, to say, hey, for the month of every March, we're going to do a gun buyback or something like that, right? Just to make it where we are collecting it. So I'm kind of, on that particular issue, just that's where I stand, right? As far as the privacy, I do want to ensure the privacy and making sure that the third party that contains the video footage and so forth is under all the other concerns I have around privacy and videos and databases, is that video imagery hosted in American servers, United States hosted servers. I think we have been seeing a lot of concerns around AI images it's concerning. I will just say, applications like TikTok and much more are deeply concerning, and I will continue my deep advocacy for privacy, right? So I do want to highlight that. I also don't want to infringe on people's rights to an extent that, we are potentially harming or violating any rights. So I would reach out to the ACLU to just go over, I think we all believe in gun safety and responsibility, but I also want to engage with the ACLU, Moms Demand Action, or Everytown USA, right? And of course, I do appreciate the reference to Gabby Gifford, who is obviously an icon in this movement. So there are local groups like that. So they are stakeholders. They are deeply interested in this. From the East Bay Moms Demand Action to the South Bay to, it's throughout the Bay Area. And they are probably genuinely leaders on this. I will also say Assemblymember Buffy Wicks has led this because her husband works in this arena as well. So just potentially being able to reach out to those stakeholders that have been working on the issue for, let's say, longer than ourselves. I think that's important to at least see what their plan is, even if we send them an email and say, this is what we have as a potential plan. I think that's important. I will also say, I think it was Councilmember Andrews who brought this up, and this is a concern of mine as well. There are reports that I've read where people purchase different pieces of a weapon and create a weapon that has no background at all. Not necessarily a ghost gun in the traditional sense of a ghost gun and 3D printed or anything like that, but just not traceable, because they bought different pieces from eBay and garage sales and out of state and so forth. So I do want to include that as much as possible. I don't think that there's enough laws around that. And then my other question that I do have is, now that CCWs are permitted throughout the nation, regardless, what are we doing about that?
I'm sorry, what could you repeat that?
It's a concealed carry permit. That's what Councilmember Wahab is referring to. That's a CCW. And I can't speak to that, but I don't know if Deputy Chief Matthews has any information.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Councilmember Wahab is referencing the recent decision from the Supreme Court. It was a case out in New York where they deemed it unconstitutional to ask people for just cause for requesting a CCW or a concealed carry permit. The state of California has a similar law on the books. My understanding is that is going to be challenged. But as it stands, that process is still in place. For Alameda County, we do not issue CCWs as individual police departments. Those all go through the county sheriff. And there is a background process to that. And as it stands, folks have to show just cause. But I would anticipate that based on that Supreme Court, that may change.
Yeah. And this is a concern of mine. I think Alameda County has been pretty stringent on who they allow, right? That has been the historic case. Hopefully with our new sheriff, we can potentially reach out to her as well to see kind of, what is the plan there. But I want to reference this because of the Supreme Court's decision about CCWs, one of the things that I have been seeing, and it's trending now, is that people are getting CCWs outside of Bay Area counties that are a little bit more stringent, if you will, and getting it in places like Fresno. And we have seen, in some of the previous protests that somebody will come from out of state completely and do significant damage, right? So what are we doing about potentially asking folks if they do carry have a CCW and it's permitted from a different county and they enter into Hayward, what are we doing around that? And if they are on public property, so let's say they're crossing the City Hall of Hayward or the library or anything like that, what authority do we have to either limit that, restrict that, question them about that, and challenge that? So I do just see areas of concern as to, do we have the authority to how are we going to check it, right? And then
Yeah, I think at least on the enforcement side, or at least the contacting folks side, we get information that somebody's in possession of a gun, we're obviously going to go talk to that person, right? If it is somebody who has a CCW, they're required to carry that in their possession, whether it's from Alameda County or a neighboring county, and then that would be vetted during the conversation with the officers. But in terms of knowing who's coming in and out of the county, at any given time. That's a challenge. And one of the other challenges that we see and deal with in California is neighboring states not having as strict of gun laws on the books. And so it is common for folks to go out of state, make a purchase, come back into state. That's very, very common because there are other places where it's very easy to access these things.
Definitely. And then I just wanted to raise an issue. I know a lot of people tend to talk about DV cases, right? And obviously, if there's a domestic disturbance, and the reason why I highlight, I think to our city manager and possibly to Chief Matthews, I live in a multifamily complex. One of our neighbors had a domestic disturbance. Obviously, I spoke to police in support of her complaint, and don't know all the details, but she ended up murdered and found in a trunk in a neighboring city. So that has deeply disturbed me. And my question is that if there is a domestic disturbance, whether 100% validated or not, right? Meaning, they want to press charges or not. And if that individual has a weapon, one, will it be removed? And then number two, if there's a domestic disturbance and it involves, let's say, a child abuse of any kind, do we inform the schools? Because I think that, we've obviously had a recent case that, Councilmember Andrews has highlighted many times, the Sophia Mason case, where I do think that we need to have open communication and significant red flags that even if it's like too precautionary, we should take that as like a serious potential risk and highlight that. What is the communication around that?
So in cases where there's domestic violence, confirmed domestic violence, there's gun violence restraining orders and domestic violence restraining orders that allow the police officers on scene to seize all firearms that are present. And so, one of the things that we do is that's a question that gets posed to the victim and any witnesses who live in the house is, are there guns present? Because if there are, then we're going to take those and confiscate those. We can do that under an emergency order. We make a phone call to a judge. They authorize the order. It's in effect for 21 days. And then the person actually has to go back before the judge and show cause to be able to get those firearms back. And the police report and the investigation gets used in many cases to deny those requests. So that's kind of how it plays out in a domestic violence scenario. People can actually go petition the court independent of the police department and ask for a gun violence restraining order. But it does give us the authority to seize those right then and there when we're on premises. In terms of notifications with the school, if a domestic violence happens in a home and a child is a witness, there would not necessarily prompt any type of notification per se. But if the child was a victim, there is a process for that.
Okay. Now, let's say if I'm just thinking of there are, I think things that could trigger just at least warning the school system if, from our welfare checks and so much more. I think that needs to kind of be discussed, and hopefully you guys can do some research as to what potentially is an opportunity to create some checks and balances, right? And some safeguards for a child who may or may not be able to speak up for themselves and obviously, defend themselves and so forth. I know it's like you stated, confirmed case. I would like to see if we can even be a little more aggressive about that and not just confirmed, but if there has been a report that there be a 30-day, we take your weapons for 30 days, 60 days, whatever the case may be, right? Not just a confirmed 100%. There's a police report and pressing charges and so forth. I think that's the precaution we can take. I don't know our legal bounds on that. So I'm hoping that I can hear a little bit more back when you guys return on this item. But I do appreciate it. I do appreciate you guys' I'm genuinely, for the most part, in support of it. I'd like a little bit more information on the things that I've requested. And I really want to think of our most vulnerable community members and seeing what we can do there. And what are we going to do in addition to not only education of folks, but then also individuals that carry weapons that really have no authority to carry the weapons, right? For example, I want that term of whether it's guns or weapons a little bit more broad too. So it's inclusive and we can just have as many safeguards in place. I do hope that we do hear from the ACLU and some of their input too, because I do think I'm a big believer of our civil liberties and, as much as we're trying to be safe and adapt to technology, I also want to make sure that, we are not infringing on anybody's rights unnecessarily either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Back to the chambers and Councilmember Lamnin.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, thank you to the work for the work on this. Do the conditional use permits, the CUPs for gun sales, do those come to council or the planning commission, or are they administratively approved?
No, they would be required to come to the planning commission at a minimum. So it would be the planning commission at a minimum. But as I mentioned, we don't have any currently, nor any requests for said CUPs that we're processing right now either.
So we don't currently require a CUP for gun sales?
We would require one. I'm saying we have not issued any because we do not have any such operations within the city limits currently. If one wanted to come in, we would require a CUP, and that CUP would be required to be issued by the Planning Commission.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And so the Big Five didn't need one because it's not their primary business?
That's correct. It was ancillary sales. Less than 10% of the floor area is used for sale, for display, et cetera. The primary sales that happen in Big Five are sporting goods, clothes, balls, shoes, you name it. I've been there multiple times to buy soccer cleats for my kids. It's
Swimming
not
gear.
gun sales.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. And then do I recall correctly from the staff report that if any of the amendments that staff was bringing forward in this report were to be encouraged or supported by council, then there would need to be an allocation of time and resources and sort of prioritization as part of this would be part of the strategic planning process in the spring. Is that kind of?
That would be staff's recommendation, given a lot of the priorities that our team is already working on right now. We'd sort of have to look at reprioritizing things if this was council's desire to prioritize this above the other work we're already doing.
Great. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to see if I was remembering the context correctly. Okay, thank you. So in some ways, kind of not up to me as a priority setting, but as one of the signers of the referral, I'll weigh in. So the challenge here, of course, is getting at the root cause. And I appreciate where staff was going with this, evaluating recommendations from experts totally makes sense. We have big issues. I really appreciate you bringing forward the comments about ammunition. I often think about this, and in some countries, it is limited. You only allowed to buy a certain number of bullets, and if we had those kinds of regulations in this country, we wouldn't have the mass shootings, wouldn't deal with suicide, accidental, all of those, but it would limit mass shooting ability, and I would love to see us work on that. And so the one area that I didn't see on here, and I apologize that I didn't send this question in ahead of time, but I'm wondering, was there any conversation internally around looking at our legislative agenda, working with our state and federal legislators, and or with the incoming sheriff or DA, as Councilmember Wahab mentioned? Has there been any thoughts on that, or would there be any thoughts on how this would fit?
I would say that, it is something that we thought about. We did provide an attachment with a number of links to ongoing work that's happening at the state level. I think that is certainly an interesting direction, is really to kind of talk with our partners at the state level and see where they're at related to some of these regulations. I think What's also just interesting is some of the other things that were brought up by Councilmember Wahab with some of the Supreme Court decisions and things that we really have to think about, and just really ensuring that whatever we're doing is going to be consistent and a regulation that we can defend and uphold, and really gets at the issues that I'm hearing a lot of you bring up tonight. But I think that that's definitely a great recommendation, is to really work with our partners at the state and see what's happening at their level. Maybe there's opportunities to make a greater impact.
I appreciate that, because I'm aware that as much as doing some of these things locally, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, and I'll get to that in a minute, but as much as doing some of these things locally may make us feel better, I'm not sure that they make lasting impact on the issue, because as was said earlier, you can go out of state and buy a gun and cause mayhem. So then that would be part of my recommendation, is to work with our state and federal legislators through our ledge advocacy program, pulling in some of the things that we've talked about, surrendering guns, or, removing guns when there's a threat in the house, as Councilmember Wahab mentioned, bullet limitations, as our very astute member, new commissioner, right? Are you a new commissioner? Right, one of our new task force members. Congratulations, mentioned. And some of the recommendations that came through in the staff's recommendations. So that would be one. Two is, I think the video surveillance is very consistent with what we do in like gold shops, pawn shops, some of those other things. So if, when council is looking in the spring at the priorities, certainly this is something that should be considered within the whole context of staff capacity priorities in the city. And the same with the third recommendation, the public guns in public spaces, having city regulations consistent with hard regulations for public spaces really seems to make a lot of sense to me. So those two I would prioritize to move into the strategic planning process, and then also the ledge and policy update. And then I'll also appreciate and recommend the internal staff conversation about really letting people know, adding to our public information about safe surrenders available at any time. What can we do to help people really call for help if they need it? As we build out our mental health programs, respect each other as human beings. I know that's really pie in the sky, but fundamentally that's part of what we're talking about. And, as we have more mental health interactions, as we have hopefully some more awareness of the Safe Surrender program, let's hear from the community as well. If what they really need is some incentives to get those guns out of closets, then maybe we go back to, I can tell you Hayward South Rotary used to fund something for the gun buyback, but to me that's not as high a priority, because I really think it's not our most effective tool in the toolbox. But if what we're hearing is, no, what's going to get me to get these guns out of my house and away from whatever is some kind of, shop Hayward first gift card, then maybe. Then I'd be open to that. And there are plenty of organizations that I think would help fund that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, back to Zoom and Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone, for the discussion. I appreciate my colleagues for bringing this referral forward, and to staff for working on these recommendations. So I'm actually probably most eager to see the buyback program be implemented. I really appreciate the idea of middle ground, not doing a major event, but just some type of streamline effort to have the weapons dropped off at the police station. I agree with Councilmember Cermeño. If we could get one weapon off the streets that could cause harm to someone, I consider that an effective use of our time. So I definitely would like to see us implement that. I think there's great opportunity to partner with surrounding cities. I know the Sheriff's Department was mentioned, but I also think a lot of times we hear that the South County is neglected. So I think this would be a great opportunity to partner with Union City, the city of Fremont. Those three cities have their own police department. department. They don't contract with the sheriff's department. So just an opportunity to just create that awareness. If we could tap into local foundations, funders to provide gift cards, incentives, but I'm also not opposed to using some city funding to get guns off our streets. So I think that's kind of a low-hanging fruit we could do. I fully acknowledge it's everything we do is staff capacity and time. So I don't take that lightly. So maybe it's something that we could plan for next year. I was looking at the month of October. Obviously, we can't do it for this year, but maybe for next year. The month of October is Intimate Partner and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I think it would be a good goal to launch that next October. In the interim, I'm really supportive of recommendation 1 and 2 by staff. I think my question's already been answered that these amendments would be moving forward. They would not impact the current, correct, because of the ancillary component. Okay. So
that's true, but it would certainly work for anybody moving forward that came to request. And that's not to say that it couldn't be evaluated outside of what's written in the ordinance currently. I think that the regulations certainly provide us sufficient flexibility to add those as requirements on issuing of those permits, whether it's the firearms dealer's permit or a conditional use permit. Making the amendments just makes it a little more explicit and transparent for those operators, which I know has been sort of a priority for council, is making sure we're being really transparent with folks that are coming to do business with the city. So in that vein, it would provide that sort of transparent requirement that they'd be aware of without having to sort of go through a process and then find out through it that they would have to have that requirement. Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of the sensitive areas, I know schools were mentioned, but I think it's important to highlight parks, libraries. One of the businesses mentioned is right across the street from our Pride and Joy in downtown. So that's just something to be mindful of in the future. I am the comments that were made in terms of how effective can we be on a local level. I think it's a good effort. We want to be proactive, but definitely want us to be spending energy in our legislative priorities. One thing that's very concerning to me is our next unincorporated town next to ours, Castro Valley. I probably drive by 3 stores on a regular basis that sell firearms. So they're right next to us. They're in our backyard. So we really have to confront this not only in our own backyard, but making sure that we are connecting with our state and federal legislators to see what type of policies we could put into place to strengthen limiting the amount of guns on our streets. And also, as the gentleman who spoke in comments earlier, I like his concept of also limiting how much ammunition people can actually purchase. So I'm open to this. I want to see it come back with fleshing out some of the questions that came out tonight for the strategic priorities. But I definitely think there are short and mid long-term goals along these policy lines that we could implement in the city of Hayward. So thank you again to staff and my colleagues that brought this referral forward.
Thank you. This has been a good discussion, and I really appreciate all the comments, and I know staff has taken them in. I mean, I think first of all, and given the discussion we had earlier and the pleas that we had earlier for focus in a little bit different area that would maybe improve a lot of people's health, I know that one of my reasons for wanting to bring this forward, and I really appreciate council members Andrews and Lamnin joining me in bringing it forward for discussion here, is just to have this discussion tonight and see where are we right now, and we know what has happened in the last few years and even more recently, and you never want to see, none of us want to see the kind of things that have shocked the nation and world really recently in connection with firearms being used to kill many people, including children. And so this, being so heavy on our minds, some of these recent incidents that have just been horrific. I've always been thinking about this issue and was chagrined when I learned that we that the the major sporting goods stores that I patronize too do sell guns, and but on the other hand, they don't make a big show of it, and I trust that those really are sporting purpose guns, and it's really good to know. I think the last time I checked, we actually had more people selling firearms, a couple more. So it seems like it's pared down even further now. And that is kind of a relief and kind of indicates that this doesn't have to be at the top of our list on what we want the planning department especially to work on. I'm glad Deputy Chief Matthews has been here listening and adding information for us, but also listening and thinking about what our police department can do further. So I heard, and I would agree, that the issue of the buyback, when I read the staff report, I thought, well, we probably don't want to do the buyback, but what we do want to do is at least let people know as much as we can that we will take those guns back. And I think Councilmember Andrews had a good idea about the gift card idea. You probably could get a stock of those. Since it doesn't seem to happen all that often, and I think that would be something to work on. Like, could we have sort of a permanent ongoing, rather than having events, but some ongoing thing that we let people know about, that if you want to turn a gun in and it's, and maybe you want to define what that gun has to be like, but then, we're glad to take it off your hands, and we'll even give you a small token in appreciation for doing that. So that would be one thing that I think we could do without too much staff work and trouble. The two other big things would be, that would take some staff time, would be implementing a videotaping requirement for sales. And I'm not sure I would, considering that we don't have a lot of gun sales places in Hayward, that might not be a high priority right now, but perhaps any new ones that wanted to come in, getting a conditional use permit, might want to think about adding that as a requirement. And I really think that we ought to at some point take up the issue of whether of prohibiting carrying guns on our public property. HARD has done this for their parks, and we have a city hall, we have a library that is well used by children in our area. I don't know would we be allowed to include schools in that? All kinds of schools, public schools as well as the private schools we have. Would we be allowed to include schools if we were to do that public property, in addition to our own property?
I'm not sure if we can, but that's certainly something we could look into and come back with a response as a part of any future discussion on this topic with council.
Of course, there is discussion of, and I don't know that that's happened here. I don't think our Board of Education is talking about arming teachers, but that's something that's been talked about nationally. So we want to be careful there. But that would be something to consider. Schools, childcare, I don't know. Just if we were to do that, I would like to see that come back at some point. Let's see. And it was a good suggestion to check on what our own local legislators are doing along these lines, and keep on top of that. Working with the Sheriff's Department, another great idea. So with that, I just thank staff for giving us this report so we could have this discussion. I think we've raised some good ideas. I think this is going to be something that maybe staff can bring back a couple of things when we do the road back. Well, when I say we, I'm not including myself at this point, but when the road map comes back next year, that might want to be considered by the next council in terms of pushing things forward. But thank you, everybody, for your contributions this evening. Councilmember Marquez, did you have another comment?
I was just going to say, I know it's difficult because I think a lot of us are pausing in our comments. I think I just have to put it out there. We all know election season's around the corner. We're going to have a new mayor, new council members. So if the public is kind of wondering what some of our pause and some of our comments, it really is that we're in a transitional time. So I just hope that our current mayor and colleagues that are going off to other endeavors will continue in part of this discussion as they're still members of our community. Just wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
Yes, well, I'll still continue to be a part of it in some way, I'm sure. None of us will forget our service and lose interest in what the city's doing, but you're right, where it's a difficult time to really be making plans, but as that song goes, I won't sing it, but there's that song, I'm Still Here. and so while we're here, we're going to do our jobs, and there'll be new people coming in next year to replace us who are not going to still be here. But with
Mayor,
that,
did you quote Beyonce?
That wasn't
I think you quoted Beyonce, so kudos to you, Mayor.
Kind of
Queen Bee all around,
Broadway
right?
song, I think, but no. I picture much older people than Beyonce singing that, but anyway. You know what I'm talking about. Yes, okay. Okay, thank you. With that, we will, though, that was a cheerful way to end a subject that is very serious, and I really do appreciate staff's input on this. I know you have a lot of work, but as was pointed out earlier, man, if we could sit, and you never know what you stopped. You never know that you have saved, that you have prevented something from happening that otherwise might have. So keep that in mind when we think about this issue. And now we really will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is council reports and announcements. Anybody have anything tonight? Go ahead. Councilmember Zermeño.
Our 12th annual Mariachi Festival is on for the 30th of September. Come on over to City Hall right outside the plaza for mariachis and Winton Middle School's Ballet Folklorico program. It's going to be a good night, taco eating contest. So hope to see you on the 30th at 4:30, from 4:30 till about 9:30.
Okay, what day is that again?
That's Friday, the 30th of September.
Okay.
See you all. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Okay, I would like to give you a report on my recent attendance at the Cal Cities Annual Conference, as I was your voting delegate and did attend the closing general session. I know that Councilmember Salinas also attended the conference, as did some of our staff members, our Assistant City Manager, our Regina Youngblood, our Public Works Director, Alex Ameri, and Management Analyst Mary Thomas, who actually moderated a panel discussion. But regarding the closing general session, which we thought was going to be very uneventful, as there were just some bylaws proposed that nobody here, I think, even had a lot of interest in giving me as the voting member direction on. And in fact, those bylaws did pass with a voice vote and were not really controversial. However, there was some excitement raised at that closing general session, and I was left to make some decisions on my own without the valuable input of my colleagues here. What happened was that there were, there are a number of people in this state, and I know we have controversy sometimes about new housing projects, but we do not have the kinds of input. In fact, we more often have our public telling us to build more dense housing and to provide more affordable housing. I'm very proud of Hayward, but not all communities are like that, and there are a number of communities in the state where they are very upset with, I get upset sometimes myself with the state imposition and taking away local control, but there are some people in the state who are really very upset about this and want the League of California Cities to do something. So they brought a petition that they had a lot of people sign, I guess, to the Resolutions Committee at the League. And the way the League works, the Resolutions Committee then considers whether that is going to go on to the, for a vote by the whole, the voting delegates at the conference. Well, the Resolutions Committee made a decision that this was premature to refer it directly at this annual conference to the voters. So they sent it to, they directed that it go to one of the policy committees, the Housing Policy Committee. And so that will happen. There was an attempt on the floor at that closing session by people to get a debate going on it, which had they succeeded, I might be down there reporting from down there back to here. It might still be going on. However, fortunately, it did not succeed after a couple of motions about whether we were going to stop debate or whatever, those kinds of motions. And I just used my own judgment and joined the group who agreed that we should not be debating it at that annual conference, but rather it will go to a policy committee and be discussed. So that is what is going to happen. And what they were asking for was that the league support a basically probably a ballot initiative to protect and strengthen local planning authority. So stay tuned on that one, but it's not happening right now. I really enjoyed being one of the panelists on a panel called Making Equity Stick and talking about all the things that we've been doing here in Hayward about that. And I got a lot of really positive comments throughout the rest of the conference. That panel was on the first day, and the people who attended really were very complimentary of the city for all it is doing in that regard, in promoting and making equity stick. And then I also attended really good sessions that I might talk more about. One, I might talk more at Sustainability Committee about that SB 1383, reducing organics, that we've all been dealing with. We got some good suggestions. And in fact, Public Works Director Mary was at that session too, and we both agreed that the suggestion of a place that the, all of this, organic compost that we have to find a place to put, we should consider contacting the people who own the two big cemeteries that we have in town, because they're using it in cemeteries in some places, and they say that it really, does help growth. And then I just, and I also attended a session on the Surplus Lands Act, which indicated that there are more questions than answers in that regard about that, which we found out with our own experience. And then I wanted to particularly commend Mary Thomas on moderating a panel that had people from, two people from the Alameda County Sheriff's Office and Supervisor Dave Brown, and it was on their Community Capitals program, or Community Capitals Policing program that actually part of Dig Deep Farms, where people who have recently been released from the jail go to work sometimes for an interim thing. So they talked about that. Anyway, that was a really good panel too. So that is my report on the Cal Cities Conference. I'm sure Council Member Salinas had a different experience, if you wanted to add anything.
Your report was very thorough, but as you're talking, I was thinking, what were the sessions I went to? And but I did go to two that stick with me right now. One, I went to the on the session on homelessness, and I looked at how Half Moon Bay, or San Mateo County, and the city of Placencia, and I think and Half Moon Bay, what they were doing. And San Mateo County, working with all of their cities, have rolled out this huge multi-million-dollar effort to house every single unhoused person in the county by the end of next year. And it's an aggressive plan. And what they're doing essentially is they're buying motels, but they're also building this huge facility from ground up. And so it's
San Mateo County?
Yeah, San Mateo County. So it was really interesting to see what they were doing. And then of course the city of Placencia, Placentia, it was interesting to see what they're doing. And the other session I went to that stuck out is the youth programming and what other cities were doing around youth programming. And it was interesting because they pointed out the most successful youth programming in their cities were partnerships with public safety. And so they highlighted their relationship with the county sheriff's department and the local municipal police departments in developing and implementing programs for youth in their city.
Do you remember what cities they were?
I have the book.
okay.
I have the
could
book in
look
my
too,
bag,
yeah.
but oh gosh, I forget. But
That's okay.
anyways, it was really interesting to see some of the innovative stuff they've been doing with public safety, and so it was good. I thought it was weather was great, and it was good old fashioned Long Beach weather, so it was good. Thank you.
A little warm, quite warm actually, and on the third day, rain.
I walked into the conference and it was 97 degrees. And when I got in the cab to go to the airport, it was 62 degrees.
Yeah, it got cool. It got very windy.
Yeah.
They were actually issuing wave warnings on Friday afternoon. So we were glad we got home. And I don't usually do this, but I just would mention that I also, last week, attended a meeting that Congressman Swalwell held with some local officials. Many of them were the education officials who attended that meeting. Councilmember Salinas was at that as well, though. And he gave us a report like this, and I'll leave it with our assistant, Chris Bondock, in case anybody wants to look at it. I will say he said there's going to be more community funding available in the spring, so watch for those notices and get our applications in. And he would like to, in anything that he's helped get us funding for, he would like to be invited when we have the, whatever we do with the ribbon cutting. So keep that in mind. And then I just also wanted to thank staff for last Tuesday night, the meeting, the virtual meeting that was held regarding Russell City and our ongoing efforts to address what happened there, and perhaps consider some ways we can provide restorative justice for what happened. So I want to really thank staff for the work that they're doing on this issue. And especially, our city manager, of course, but our assistant city manager, Regina Youngblood, is kind of heading up that effort for staff. So with that, okay, Councilmember Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. I just wanted to share some exciting opportunities for the community. I think most of my colleagues are going to be joining the Tennyson High School. The program is going to be having a car show this Saturday at Tennyson High School from 10 to 2. It's a car show, and all the proceeds are going to go towards their college tours. And also wanted to just share, those of you that are involved or interested in supporting one of our local nonprofits, La Familia Counseling is going to be having a first annual golf tournament. I believe all the golf slots are already booked, but if you want to join them for dinner at Stonebrae, that's going to be on October 17th at 5 p.m. and you could purchase your tickets through their website. Also wanted to share, as your representative of East Bay Community Energy, all of our residents that are on our CARE and FARA discounted programs should have received a $50 credit this past month. Unfortunately, some people were billed rather than given a credit, and you should have received an email notification or a robocall, and EBCE will be working to correct that. But there was supposed to be a credit for everyone that is on CARE and FARA programs of $50. And then also wanted just to report, as the representative on Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District, just want to report that there is no West Nile virus. There's no birds, there's no mosquitoes. We're doing really, really good. And ACMAD also joined HASPA. We are expanding the JPA for HASPA, the Hayward Shoreline Planning Agency. I'm sorry, I'm getting the acronym tongue-tied here, but ACMAD has joined HASPA as well as Ora Loma Sanitary District. So hopefully with those efforts of expanding our JPA, we'll be able to start implementing the shoreline adaptation plan. So just wanted to share those updates with everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that news. And that is a really good thing that we're having completed the plan, we're going to move into implementation. So glad to hear it. All right. So let's see. Have anything else after council referrals? No. The next thing is adjournment. So our next meeting, we will be meeting again next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. Again, we'll be having a hybrid format. So until next week, September 27th at 7 p.m. This council is adjourned. Thank you.